This is Tom Grassi, and this is 30 and 30, and you're watching Illogical Canadian.
Nice try, puns. That only applies for 15 minutes. Nice try, Buster. Skip class. Alright, so this is gonna be probably the most damning thing I probably will ever put out. But we're gonna try. It's a different pace from what you're normally used to with me. So it's something different. Again, I'm gonna try the best I can. I already consumed what I needed to consume to ensure that I knew where my limit was. So we're gonna
I mean, we already know your limit. We saw the third day of my college basketball imperialism.
Yeah, but it's fluctuated since then.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Because weed limitations do fluctuate with people. It does. So I'm gonna try to introduce some guidelines here, so that way we can try to have a sense of normalcy. Try is all fucking capitalized.
Try.
Okay. So some guidelines. If you need to ask a question, just say I have a question. And then when I see your thing and I tell you to ask a question, you may ask a question. Obviously, if at any point if you're free to come and go as you please. And you are not forced to stay here, but if you do choose to stay for all this, you are a brave son of a bitch.
Be careful.
You are a brave son of a bitch.
Be careful.
Honestly, I would encourage note-taking on any device, or if you're old school and you like to do your notes on paper and pen, then go be my guest. I'm not gonna stop you. Is he getting fucking notes out? What is he doing? Is he getting paper? Or is he even fucking cap his drink? I can tell because look at him. Cap your drink. Fucking hell. Honestly, we're gonna go through bit by bit. If you need me to slow down on any part, just say slow down. Because I'm gonna try to do this at the best pace that I possibly can. It's the best way. Yeah, he's got fucking paper and pen. There it is. I just saw that. Yep, he's got it. Bro's ready. But honestly, if you have any questions at any time, again, like I said, just let me know and say I have a question. I'll get to you right away. Again, so this is a big lesson considering of the time period involved and everything in between that kind of got screwy. And it's not just warring, and that's in this sense. Yes, there are a lot of wars, but there's also a lot of other things in here too. So there are going to be parts that I know more in depth about, and there's going to be parts that I know less about, and those are the parts I'm going to need to oversimplify a little bit, or to the best of my ability to oversimplify it. With that, I think Syria caused North Korea. Oh, good lord! Now, mind you, and this is a disclaimer. And this is a disclaimer. Yes, I am aware that politics will be discussed during this. However, these are historical politics, not modern, not concurrent. So we're going to try to limit, and by limit, I mean prohibit, any talk of concurrent politics. There may be some ties between historical politics and modern politics from this, but that should not influence you, nor does it make it okay to talk about it. If you are asking a question that involves it, I'll allow it, because you're asking a question, you're trying to learn. I understand. I'll allow that, but just regular discussion about it, let's try to keep that to a minimum. So, so I think we should take a first look. Actually, kind of an introductory period here. As all, I'm illogical. I had 6 edibles. I'm okay right now. So you're okay. That's Doc. Obviously, he's gonna be with me, making sure that I don't really fall off the fucking rail. You can call me Mr.
Yep, we already failed once again during imperialism.
Yeah, we got. Yeah, you can refer to me as Mr. Canadian for the night. You can refer to him as Mr. Duck. He'd be
basically the TA.
Yeah, the TA. Exactly like the TA. I was actually gonna say TA just then, but you took the words right out of my mouth. Your minds think alike. No. So, because look at this is a period of time that I gathered and organized together into one big thing. I created this back all the way in 7th grade. Before 7th grade. Is that summer before 7th grade started. This is something that I have a lot of knowledge in. From all the years pre-collegiate education, pre-collegiate academics and collegiate academics combined. Spent a lot of my time in college learning primarily about that era, or spending a lot of the time on my history classes and other aspects, learning and trying to tie together stuff into that specific era. The World War era, as I dub it, is a 35-year period between 1912 and 1947. Now, before I had it at 1946. However, I feel that there wasn't really a good end point for it until 1947. So a few years ago, I made the change to include the 1 extra year to kind of balance that out and put out a nice round number, along with finding a good end point, which would be which would be in Greece. But I'll get to that later. So it starts in the Balkans. It's important to note at this time in Europe, tensions were rising. They were rising, with armies trying to better one another in numbers and all that shit. The Germans trying to match the might of the Royal British Navy to try and combat superiority of the waters. Because they usually say whoever controls the sea controls the war. And that's true. That was true back at the start of the 20th century. 1912 is no different. At this point, tensions were high. specifically in regards to many different things. 1912 saw our first two wars start, some shorter than others. Well, actually, I think one of them actually might have ended in 1912. I'm gonna check. Gonna fact check that, so that way I don't. Yeah, it did. It ended in 1912. Okay, so let's start with the war that ended in 1912. So we're gonna go back slightly in time to late September 1911, when the Italians and the Ottomans went to war with one another, specifically regarding the territory now known as Libya. The war was eventually won by the Italians, and as a result, not only did the Italians gain the Libyan colony, yes. They also gained the Dodecanese Islands off the coast of what was now the Ottoman Empire. Not very many, but there was still some. But with that war, all that really did was just kind of kick that can a little bit down the road. Like, that wasn't really the straw that broke the camel's back. This one did. We head to the Balkans, to where we find our first big war. And it was the First Balkan War. So to paint the picture for you, the Balkans back then were not really an area full of tension. Some 110 years ago, they were actually pretty chill with one another. Except the Ottoman Empire, who controlled much of the Thrace and Macedon regions in current Greece, as well as Macedonia, or now North Macedonia, and as well as the modern country of Albania as well. So, as well as parts of southern Serbia, and as well as what is today Kosovo. Pretty vast area in there. So obviously they went to war to try to not only kick the Ottomans out of the Balkans, but as well to get Albania independent. North Macedonia, as we know it, was still considered to be either Serbian or Bulgarian. In fact, there was a set agreement followed between the Serbians and the Bulgarians that had basically stated along the lines of, if we win this war, we will split up the territory that is now Macedonia. They basically, the Bulgarians would get the east, Serbia would get the west. In that particular order. That western point would basically be from the Albanian border to the center point, and Bulgaria from their border with Serbia to the center point. Simple as that. So, this war was 9 months long. It dragged into 1913. There was a lot that had, I guess, conspired. Like, you had Romania in there, you had Serbia, you had Greece. Now you're thinking, where's Bosnia? Where's Croatia and all this? Well, see, they're not in this yet. Because they were still a part of Austria-Hungary from prior conflicts and all that. Bosnia itself was annexed into Austria-Hungary in 1908. Or some say 1910. So it's kind of a little bit of a contested spot because no one knows for sure which of those two they had gotten. So, but all we know is one of those 2 years, Bosnia was annexed by Austria-Hungary. And now we go on to the treaty, the eventual Treaty of London. In 1913, the Ottomans had lost. The tiny little Balkan alliance had won. And as such, we get the terms. So, Greece gained Western Thrace. Bulgaria had gained Eastern Thrace, which is where kind of Istanbul sits. But the border stopped just short of Istanbul proper, meaning that it was still under the control of the Ottoman Empire. they had basically, for the most part, taken all the land around it that wasn't Istanbul. And Bulgaria had gotten nothing else. Serbia wound up taking all of Macedonia, and Albania was launched as an independent country. Bulgaria kind of felt a little pissed off. Now, why was Bulgaria pissed off? Well, remember that agreement between Serbia and Bulgaria I told you earlier? That's why. Serbia had another agreement with Greece concerning the future of Albania, as well as Montenegro, for some reason. Bulgaria saw and thought that Serbia had taken the Greek deal and had prioritized it more than the agreement that they had with Bulgaria. So how would Bulgaria rationally respond in this case? Obviously, send diplomats to try to resolve that dispute, hold grudge against your Balkan neighbor and brethren, or just outright fucking invade. If you chose option C, you would be right. Because Bulgaria wanted revenge, and so the Second Balkan War occurs. The stupidest fucking reason to start a war because you have a self-pittance. This was purely self-pittance. Bulgaria got pissy and invaded Serbia. And jumping to the aid, you had Greece jumping in, Romania jumping in, Serbia jumping in. And then later, towards the back end of the war, the fucking Ottomans got involved on the side of the Balkan countries. You know, the side they had just finished losing to. Seeing as the fucking resistance against them was way too much to handle, Bulgaria eventually lost, being forced to surrender and lose some, actually not that bad territory. Bulgaria lost part of Eastern Thrace to Greece while losing the rest to the Ottoman Empire. Romania had taken a bit of northeastern territory from Bulgaria, whereas Serbia, all they did was just take some minor border territory between the two. Nothing bad there. It was all simple there. And then it kind of picked up with now the Balkans having tension for the first time concerning not only the Ottomans were back in Europe, but also Bulgaria hating the freaking Ottomans and the rest of the Balkans. And then Serbia was just kind of cozying up to Russia because for some reason that's a thing. And, well, vengeance of trying to get back at the Austrians for, annexing Bosnia. When it was really in Hungarian territory of the Austrian Empire, but, I digress. But this is where we get to, arguably, our first big war. But before then, let's head to China. Because, oh boy, China has some things going on with it. China obviously was coming towards the end of its Qing dynasty. Now, this is back in 1912, so actually also started in 1913 a little bit, so kind of go with that. China was going to the end of the Qing dynasty. And after what seemed like endless fucking determination to try to figure out what the next step was going to be, and a lot of warring with the kingdoms again, in comes the Republic of China, which was already fragile from the start. The Republic of China is something that we still use in modern day, because that is now how people describe the fucking island of Taiwan. But that is a whole other issue that unfortunately is just outside the spectrum of this era. So to continue on, China had become a republic for the very first time but it was already fucking fragile. Now, the fighting wouldn't start till around the 20s, but that is we'll get to that after World War One. All you need to know right now is China is in a very fragile state. And so the Europeans, I think a decade or so prior, actually decided, fuck it. How about we establish some colonies in northeastern China? Just very small territories that are either on the coast or in some cases just a city to establish trade ports and other means. This allowed the Europeans to kind of benefit off this. And that's where more tension came from. Colonies. There were some countries that got actually decent amounts of Africa. There were some that got jack shit. I'm looking at you, fucking Spain and Portugal. But they're not even important for these. Well, one of them is. But still. It was fucked. So, we're at 1914. We are in June. We are now in a point where the tension can literally be broken at any time. All it takes is for someone to simply breathe the wrong way. Oh, that's right, Macau as well. There you go. Hong Kong, that's another one. But the thing is, they had gotten that in 1898. Right? It was 1898 when Hong Kong and Macau were established. Well, actually, 1897 and 1898, as well as an agreement with China in their Qing Dynasty days to basically put a 100-year lease on those cities. Yes, there was a fucking lease of territory. You look like you have a question.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you're confused. It's very, very weird. I've never heard of a lease on territory. Well, yeah, the U.S. knows. I'm sure the U.S. would know a thing or two about leased territory. Guantanamo Bay. That's a whole other thing, though.
Well, again, the trade's still on the table. Alberta for Minnesota.
Alberta for Minnesota. Fucking hell.
But anyway, go on.
Yeah. So, honestly, parts along Port Arthur and Tsingtao in China were colonized. Germany had a bit. Austria fucking Hungary, a country that got no colonies in Africa, had Tsingtao in China. Obviously, the French and British had their setup. Portugal obviously had Macau. It was a whole web. So back to Europe. What's going on? What's going on in Europe? Well, at this point, nothing's really going on. Just some army build up and waiting for one side, waiting for the other to make the first move. No one knows what was going on. But there is a pretty cool parade going down Sarajevo right now. And oh, hey, it's the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne, the next leader of Austria-Hungary. So he decides, why not just take a nice little stroll into Sarajevo? Greet the people, hold some babies, all that shit. Yeah, see, there was a Serbian guy. There was a Serbian guy at this parade. His name is Gavrilo Princip. He was a Serbian nationalist who was living in Bosnia or living in Serbia, depending on what source you ask. And he very much did not like the fact Bosnia was under Austrian control. He failed the initial assassination attempt. Initially, he failed because the bomb hit a fucking convoy vehicle and not the goddamn main. He skirted away, but returned to go towards the hospital later on. And it just so fucking happened that cart took a wrong turn. And all of a sudden, Franz fucking Ferdinand comes face to face with Princip almost. It was just right there. Princip pulls out the pew pew and right to the face. Dead. The Austrian Duke has been assassinated. Austria-Hungary is understandably pissed. They are understandably pissed at just how the hell could this have happened? Now, I think at this point, you're just waiting for it to explode. The fire is already lit, has already lit the oil. This is not good. It's just about how the situation gets handled that could either make war or break war. And by break war, I mean no war at all. Austria, not sure of what to do, goes to Germany. No, like, our guy just got fucking shot. He's dead. So we know Serbia had something to do with it, or at least they thought they did. We need to know if you'll support us should war break out. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the blank check. Where basically Germany just said, yeah, we got your back. And so Austria, knowing that they have their German support right behind them, I guess at that point held all the playing cards. The blank check was essentially Germany telling Austria they would have their back in case they were invaded or had war declared upon them. Knowing that they had the support, Austria sent an ultimatum. Instead of just outright declaring war right away, they actually gave a chance to Serbia. Now, I want to read you the exact conditions of the ultimatum. Just give me 1 second to pull that up. Just give me 1 second. I'm trying to find it. Take a minute. Just give me a second. Right here. I found the ultimatum. Furthermore, the Royal Serbian government pledges to 1. Suppress any publication inciting hatred or contempt of the monarchy and any works promoting actions against its territorial integrity. 2. Dissolve the Narodna Odbrana Society and confiscate its propaganda tools, similarly addressing other organizations in Serbia involved in anti-monarchy activities, ensuring these groups cannot reconstitute themselves under a different name or form. 3. Remove from Serbian public education any content, whether in teaching staff or instructional materials, liable to incite propaganda against Austria-Hungary. 4. Dismiss from military and civil service all officers and officials guilty of anti-monarchy propaganda, with the names and offenses to be communicated by the imperial and royal governments. 5. Permit Austro-Hungarian representatives to collaborate in Serbia in the suppression of the subversive movement targeting the monarchy's territorial integrity. 6. Initiate judicial proceedings against those implicated in the June 28 conspiracy within Serbian territory, with Austro-Hungarian delegates participating in the investigations. 7. Immediately arrest Commandant Vojislav Tenkosic and Milan Siganovic, a Serbian state employee implicated by the Sarajevo investigation. 8. Prevent Serbian authorities from aiding the illegal trafficking of arms and explosives across the border and dismiss and severely punish officials at the Shabak and Losnica posts who assisted the assassins of Sarajevo. 9. To provide explanations regarding hostile remarks made by Serbian officials, both domestically and abroad, who, despite their official status, expressed hostility toward the monarchy in interviews following the June 28th attack. And 10. Notifying the imperial and royal government without delay of the execution of these measures. The imperial royal governments expect the Serbian government's response by Saturday, July 25th at 5 o'clock local time. A memorandum detailing the results of the Sarajevo investigation concerning officials mentioned in points 7 and 8 is attached to this note. There you go. Serbia very obviously liked a lot of those points. And we're actually willing to do it. However, one of those points, to which we do not know of, at least I don't know of, basically the Serbians could and not have happened. So, what do you do if you don't like something? Usually, sometimes you go with the negotiator route to try and reason, like, okay, we like all these parts. It's just this one part in this entire thing that we don't want. If we were to modify one of your other points to make it more favorable for you, would you be okay with having this point removed? The question, it's about one of the shit. Yes, what is your question? What is your question? What is your question now? Puns. Waiting for him to ask this question. That's what I'm just waiting for.
It's all good.
You can't take a drink. By the way, while we wait for puns, I have bought the Stream Deck. Oh shit! Thank God that's a pop off.
I was gonna say, be careful.
Yeah, the stand is detachable from the main deck, but yeah, I bought the Stream Deck. It was a lot cheaper than I was expecting it to be. So now I have excess money, and I had to buy a USB port off Amazon to try to accommodate the cables, the extra cables, which I already bought it. It's on its way. So right now, I only have a program for some websites and applications on my laptop. But I'm going to be building it more since I can have multiple pages on that, apparently. Like, if you got some sound bits you want to send, so I can put into it, let me know. Like, I'm sure we can get that.
What's that?
I'm waiting for Puns to ask this question. In the meantime, hope I'm doing you guys some justice. The week did hit like a few minutes ago. LeBron's on with the Sixers. I saw that. I saw it when I woke up. But all right, not exactly a question. The point was rejected. That's what it was. I was rejected. One serving to Austrian investigators, etc., etc. Oh, okay. So that was the point. All right, thank you. You actually helped me out with that. Thank you. So they fucked up in that regard. You're right, and you're right that they would absolutely deny that. It's with that regard in point as well, right? So that's the one point. No, look at it. Take any other provision here, and we'll add on to it. We just can't have Austrian investigators because we feel that bringing in someone from the victim side can influence and sway our investigators, which could be seen as tampering. So we have to do this on our own accord, which I think is fair. Austria, seeing that the ultimatum was rejected, outright rejected because of that one point, you'd think, okay, maybe we can actually try to work with Serbia on that one issue. But instead, no. On July 28th, 1914, Austria said, fuck you, Serbia. We are now going to war. And so Austria declares war on Serbia. And just a couple of days later, the Russian Empire, who's allied with Serbia, declares war on Austria-Hungary. On August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. And just because they wanted to fuck with the French some more, declared war on France on August 4th. So this is where we get to our first historical strategy of this era. The Schlieffen Plan. It's the Schlieffen Plan. There you go. This was a plan by German General von Schlieffen that would incite this. The Germans would attack France, northern France, via Belgium. They try to cut them off, get to Paris, surrender, with France surrendering, and then focusing all troops on Russia. Now, this is what the plan did not account on. The British. They did not exactly History and Russia were in alliance, right? They were a part of that alliance as well, thank you. But Germany was one to declare war on France, not the other way around. So, again, the one thing that the Germans, Schlieffen didn't plan was the British. Because at that point, they were not allied. Meaning that whatever happened to Belgium, they thought was gonna be just Belgium, no Britain. We're fine. So what happened? Germany invaded Belgium and Luxembourg. Because I don't know why Luxembourg, they just did. But they invaded through Belgium, who, by the way, was not prepared to let Germans just invade them, nor just simply let their troops walk through, decided to fight back. And the British, the one factor Schlieffen didn't account for, guess fucking what? Declare war on Germany. So that made shit worse. Now, it was basically the Allies and the Central Powers. But there was one Central Power that was not in the war. Italy. Had a bit of an issue. For some reason. And it was involving a grudge with Austria. Specifically in the Tyrol region of what is now northern Italy. But at that point, was under Austrian control. So, that thing was still being worked out. And obviously, this brought in all of the French and British colonial possessions. Canada, Australia, South Africa, and France's big ass fucking chunk of colony in Africa, including like some Morocco, Algeria, Chad, Niger, Mali, Mauritania, all that. All that. You stretching?
Yes, just stretching.
Yeah.
Been a long day at work. Forgive me.
No, you're okay. You're okay. There's a lot. I know. We're just scraping the top of the barrel right now. So, Germany had marched successfully through Belgium and penetrated this one area that the French and British and others had considered to be impenetrable. The Ardennes. A big fucking forest. When is it? You'll see. You'll see. Italy also had non-aggression pact with Germany as well, meaning they didn't have to fall during the war. Oh, okay. All right, we'll figure that little tidbit. That's actually interesting. Anyway, they nearly got to Paris, but the Battle of the Marne happened, and the French actually stopped the German advancement. And ladies and gentlemen, it's time for everyone's favorite form of warfare, trench warfare. A massive fucking series of trenches along the front lines on both sides, played for gruesome, dragged out, long-form wars. Like, it went all the way from the French coast near Calais to all the way down through to the border with Switzerland. It was fucking massive. Like, you're talking, right? You are talking pure grade A bullshit. But honestly, like, at this point, like, look at, imagine these two lines, right? Imagine these here. Imagine each hand represents a trench line, okay? Mm-hmm. Imagine with me, if you will, that one side is German, one side is French. If the Germans won the battle, it would basically be like this. See? That's all it was. That is all that advancement was. But however, if the French won, it'd be like this. Wow. Real fucking shift. That's all it was. It was basically trench for trench. That is all you could fucking get. This made fighting batshit stupid. And this is where the Germans decide, wait a fucking minute. We can use this thing called fucking mustard gas to fucking go ahead and shell that shit out. The first mention of why the Geneva Convention was put in place in the first place. The other reason is Canada. For reasons I'll get into, but fucking Canada. Canada is just Canada. Harvey, shut up. Admittedly, the front at that point had stalled the fuck out. They completely stalled. On the Eastern Front, really not much was happening there either. Well, the Russians and Germans have made tiny advancements into each other's territories, but not really much of anything. It was also towards the end of 1914 or 1915, I'm not sure where it happened. But essentially, Bulgaria had joined the war against Serbia. Because of fucking course they did. The salty pricks. It was also towards the end of 1914 that the Central Powers got yet another ally, the Ottoman Empire. For some fucking reason, the Ottoman Empire. So those are two countries that the Balkans fucking hated against the rest of the Balkans. By Christmas of 1914, not much really had happened. But we get to actually a pretty wholesome moment in this fucking war, shockingly enough. The Christmas truce. Honestly, this was a point, in the war where you thought, okay, the war won't go on much longer. Or at least they had thought that. Only half, that's funny. They're like, look it's the holidays, we can't be home with our families. Let's just spend Christmas with each other. It's like, I know we're at war, but let's have a bit of a truce. Let's just kind of chillax. So then, they feasted together. They talked. They shared stories. They played sports like soccer. They actually got along for the entire holiday season. They went, and they were just excited. They celebrated the holidays together as if they were their own families, but were on the opposite sides of no man's land. Now you gotta admit, that's pretty wholesome. You don't expect a lot of wholesome in history, but I feel like that's wholesome. But obviously, once the holidays ended, they went back to their opposite trenches, and they were fighting again. Sad, but at least they had a nice moment. Bulgaria joins the war in 1915 by the correction of puns, and together with Austria and Bulgaria and the Ottomans, well, Serbia died. But they decided to go into Albania for some fucking reason. And then that got invaded in 1916. And then pushed into Greece, who joined in the war in 1917. It was like a game of fucking cat and mouse. But I'm getting too far ahead. 1915 didn't see much changes. With the invasion the Germans had in the previous year's Battle of Tannenberg resulting in their victory, they were beginning to push into what is modern day Poland. And when it got to modern day Poland, that the Russians, obviously at this point, were already not happy with their government, their monarchy, or their czar. But they still stuck with him for now. He hasn't pissed them off yet. And essentially 1915 was just a slow year. 1916, though, is where we get actually some actual progression. The Russians invade parts of northeastern Austria, but we get a little part. They get about it's like this. Like, this is about the size of their territory right here. It was like a little half moon. Pretty impressive stuff. Obviously, to be pushed back later on. The pushback wouldn't happen until sometime in mid-1916. What, Harv? What the fuck even was the Ottoman Empire? They were basically Roman Empire, then Eastern Roman Empire, turned into the Byzantine Empire after Rome fell, and then over time, it diminished, and then the Ottoman Empire took over from there, but with just Southeastern Europe and the Middle East and Egypt. So we're basically trying to be the Roman Empire, but an Arabic Roman Empire, in a way. Anyways, continuing on, like the trench warfare was bad because you thought the fucking Germans using gas and stuff was bad. Try the conditions in the Battle of Gallipoli in 1915. Like it was fucking really bad. Like you're talking very hot and humid temperatures, like very hot and humid heat, no wind, and you're just basically there sweating your nuts off. There's mud puddles everywhere, rats for disease. You know, that don't exactly make for fucking favorable fighting conditions. It was sweating. It was pretty fucking bad. But let's talk about the two newest entries of this war. First of all, Romania. Welcome to the fight. Now, I understand you were not exactly favorable towards Hungary within the Austro-Hungarian part of the empire. And proceeded to basically get ass fucked. He had a little bit of success, and then straight fucked. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna go ahead, try to encroach here. No! They basically trapped him. And Romania was screwed. Literally screwed. Oh,
Yeah, I used the restroom.
Oh, yeah, yes, you will use restroom, yes.
It's like I'm fucking college all over again.
I guess I am taking a drink. I am really fucking thirsty. If you're enjoying the stream so far, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Because we're really going old school here. And I may be high as shit right now. But, honestly, God, this is fun. This is actually pretty fun. For someone that actually really didn't prepare much for this stream, Harvey! I'm beating your fucking ass. I'm beating your fucking ass. Where the fuck is he?
I ought to beat you over the top of the head with this here flashlight, because I need to interrogate you as to why you thought this was a good idea.
Eat string time, bitch! We're good. You're good. What do you think Duck watches in the bathroom? And yes, we're waiting for Duck to get back. Oi, my tree fitty. Oh, my tree fitty. Yeah, the TA will take care of Harvey when we get back. But, I mean, like I said, I made a promise with the stream donation incentives. So, this is me living up to my word, because I am a man of my word. There's going to be a lot more that happens spaced out to try to complete as many of these as I can. If I feel it impossible to complete, I will, in my discretion, cut that off. Dog gorgeous. I want him to see that one. I remember where I stopped, so I just wanted that to be here so that way we continue on, because the teacher needs his TA. So take a second. Take a second, take a drink. All right, take a minute. Get a drink, get a little snack. Go ahead. It's perfectly okay. Because you're getting a lot of information here. You're getting a lot of information really fast. Yeah, hydration break. Pausa deidratazione. Okay, if I'm willing to do shit for money like this, I'm fucking feasible. God damn.
A young
Ah. These Brazilian crackers I found, with my mom. These shits are good. They're like little milk cookies, but they're good.
shows it
How's the sample?
yellow.
I wonder how long does it take for him to use the goddamn bathroom? Is he taking a shit? Chad, I think he might be taking a shit. Oh, I didn't mention the Lusitania. You're right. All right, so while we wait for Doc, I'll talk about the Lusitania. So in May 1915, by this point, the Germans had U-boats or submarines. They had shit to sink any boats the British may have been using to send resources. So the Germans saw a boat in May 1915, thinking that it was just another transport ship. See, that wasn't the case. That was the HMS Lusitania, a passenger and transport ship, but mainly used for transport, mainly used for passenger transportation. Yeah, that's not exactly good, especially when some of those passengers were American citizens, but mainly British and French. So obviously the Americans are pissed, but the Germans agreed to some provisions from the U.S., which allowed the U.S. to stay out of the war for now. But back to 1916. Hopefully you guys have gotten your snacks and drinks. So let's continue, shall we? So we just talked about how Romania had basically gotten ass fucked after joining the war in 1916. Let's talk about our second entrance to the war. And one that you actually might not expect. Italy joins the Allies. Yes. So remember earlier when I had said that Italy and Austria-Hungary had this dispute concerning the region of Tyrol, specifically South Tyrol, which Italy wanted because there was a predominance of Italians there. Which makes sense, I guess. Now, they actually never got.
No, it's this thing called shitting. Harvey.
Yeah, bro, you walked only quacks according to Harvey.
Well, Harvey needs to get his fucking head out of the gutter then.
He can't. He's got fucked up teeth.
True.
All right. So, Italy joins the war because Austria, Hungary, and Italy could not work out their differences over Tyrol, as the Austrians just didn't want to lose the land for some reason. So Italy was like, all right, I see how it is. Joins the Allies, says, fuck the Central Powers. So, okay. So, essentially, they got fucked. Right? Well, shit. And so, as the war progressed, it was long dragged out, entrenched within the mountains as well, which made things worse. And by Christmas of 1916, there was no love lost. Oh, doesn't come back in the first. Oh yeah, that too. That promise happened too.
Yeah.
I actually got to go back to 1915 a little bit because we got to talk about the first British invasion of the Ottomans. The British had actually invaded through this little area called Kuwait. Kuwait, at the time, was under Ottoman control. And so, via using the bases at their protectorate states of the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman, you'll get those ships to for that invasion. By 1915, the German colonies in Africa, by the way, were gone. All gone. They took care of that. On the Asian front, Japan had actually taken the German island territories in the Pacific. Man, the Japan, oh boy, did they have themselves a lot of fucking islands. A fucking metric shit ton. Insane. Absolutely fucking insane. Obviously, sharing the war effort too, that was another factor I know as well. But Japan took most of the territory. And now we get to our first non-war activity coming out of what was going on in World War One. There was one part of 1916 I had neglected to tell you until now. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our first rebellion. And for this, we have to head over to Dublin, in what is now Ireland, because the Irish Republicans had staged an uprising against the British, wanting to be independent. Now, Ireland and Britain have a very long history, specifically of England, but it's still Britain. And it goes all the way back to when the English first invaded and took control of Ireland in 1171. And has been dominated by the British ever since. Not exactly good for the Irish settlers there, obviously, and the native Irish. So in 1916, they wanted nothing to do with the British. They staged the uprising in Dublin. And after 4 days, well, the rebellion was put down. They've been put down, put to rest, nothing that they could do. 1916 as well also saw the Battle of the Somme, the deadliest battle of all World War One. On day one alone, we saw 80,000 dead due to gas attacks and as well as the innovation of a new weapon. A motherfucking tank. The tanks saw their very first war usage at the Battle of the Somme. And oh boy, was there a lot of fucking shit there. Alright, Harvey. Into you. It's very tumultuous, but by this point, as we enter 1917, well, Greece joins the war. First of all, we can get that out of the way, and they begin to push back there. Then you have the sequence of morale being low, supplies being low, with Portugal also joining the war in 1916. really didn't help any efforts. By this point, both sides were exhausted. They were both absolutely fucking restless. Germany thought, okay, wait a minute, we gotta get a new front. I think I have an idea. So he sends a telegram to Mexico with the promise that if Mexico joined the Central Powers, that they would get back all territory they lost to the United States in the Mexican-American War. So, oh shit, it's getting all spicy up in here. But thing is, it never gets to Mexico undetected because the British fucking intercepted it. They intercepted it, they translated it, and then they sent it to the United States. Welcome to the war, USA. So at this point, we are all fucked. Because in comes the supposed savior of the world, the morbidly obese, the United States. And troops began crossing the Atlantic and heading to Britain. But there was also another lingering question on top of Greece and the U.S. joining the war. Like, with morale and everything low, resources low, everything low, who was going to break first? By that, I mean, which country is fucked and either collapses on itself or has to leave due to major issues? Well, as it turns out, the answer is Russia. So, Russia was sick and fucking tired of Tsar Nicholas II. Tsar Nicholas II was the Tsar, obviously, but he was also along the fucking front lines, leaving behind with his wife and his kids Rasputin. You know, the fucking weird psycho magic guy that apparently magically healed his kid, when all in reality he just took the kid's medication away. So, yeah. Literally that. The Russians were like, oh, hell no. Decided, fuck Rasputin, which they killed him, and fuck Tsar Nicholas. In comes the February Revolution, in which successfully Tsar Nicholas is ousted from power. The monarchy has been overthrown. He is forced to abdicate the throne and told to fuck off. And so a republic is established with a provisional government led by Alexander Kerensky. Kerensky was shit. He was so shit that he kept the Russians in the fucking war. Okay? Kept them in the war. What the fuck are you doing? We wanted you in power because we want to get out of this war. Why are you keeping us in? And the Germans, you know, being the spiteful little buggers they are, you know what they do? They go to Switzerland, where a Russian man just so happened to be exiled. And they break down the wall and go, who wants to start a revolution? That man was none other than our boy, Vladimir Lenin. Grandpapa Lenin decided to go back to Russia, being sent by the Germans to cause an uproar. Seeing how bad he was getting in Russia, the Bolsheviks were going to prevail. In comes the October Revolution. November 7th, 1917. The Bolsheviks start the October Revolution. They take over the government. Now, at this point, it is still under the Russian Republic name because with that revolution, we got a civil war. A civil war breaks out in Russia in the middle of World War I. Now, at this point, the Leninist government had agreed to peace with Germany to get out of the war. To, go take care of this whole civil war shit. And now, we see Russia out of the war. It loses a lot of territory, including Finland. Finland breaks away from Russia in 1917. First new nation alert. And now, we're basically put between a rock and a hard place. Here's the situation. Russia was in the midst of a civil war that they themselves put themselves in after pulling out of a war because of already scarce the goddamn supplies. And that's a bad idea. And makes you just look like hypocrites in the fucking first place. But honestly, we'll have to talk about the Russian Civil War after. We gotta talk about the rest of the war. Revolts and everything were already beginning to break out. Basically, essentially, through the Balkans and the Middle East. Especially spearheaded by Lawrence of Arabia, who was a British soldier, but honestly went and helped the Arabs in their revolt against the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire, I want to remind you, by the way, I got to go back to 1915 because I missed something. And we enter our first genocide. Yeah. Multiple genocides in the same fucking era. Unbelievable. So, 1915, the Ottomans were not doing so hot. They were losing battles on the Arabian Peninsula to the British, as well as in parts of Europe to Greece and Bulgaria. To Bulgaria. The Ottomans were not doing so hot. When they blamed their losses, especially in the Caucasus region, considered to be caused by the Armenian population. The Armenian genocide started. And what would be, well, in all comparison, small incident. Hold on, I gotta take a sip. That's good. And they caused the Armenian genocide, and through its 8-year span, would cause a death of 1.5 million ethnic Armenians, and an expulsion of many more. It's sad. It's not talked about, and even to this day, the Republic of Turkey and the Republic of Azerbaijan still are the only two countries to not recognize this as a genocide. Because the U.S. also does recognize it as such. It's just simply fucking horrible. The things that were done are too graphic to even mention on stream. But you can imagine just how bad it was. Again, but basically at the point, the Ottomans are already weakened enough So they were already getting attacked with Lawrence of Arabia, coming in to help the Arabian states revolt against the Ottomans, become free. Regarding the Middle East as well, in 1916, we get an agreement in place between France and Britain. This is important because this will decide how some countries are formed in the Middle East after the war, in which the French and the British will occupy different parts of the Middle East. This is where we get British Palestine, as well as Syria. Whereas the French would occupy Jordan and Iraq and Lebanon for some reason. And that's where that line would be drawn. And now we're at a standstill where I'm trying to think of the right word here. They're trying to think like that's how they had the territory marked out. It's really fucky and would cause a lot of problems. It would cause a lot of problems really fast. And you'll see why later. So, at this point, the war effort was becoming more and more futile. And with the American troops, finally entering the continent in 1918, it was practically over. The Allies were pushing up from Italy, from the Balkans, and from the Middle East. The first to fall in this domino effect was Bulgaria, after many failed attempts at trying to restore any sort of peace, as they were basically being invaded from all over. The next domino to fall was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was the second to fall, with them having no option to continue fighting any longer. The third domino was Austria-Hungary, who amidst all the goddamn turmoil had collapsed, disintegrated. And then Germany surrenders on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. Peace treaties will be established later after months of negotiation. The first treaty to be signed was the biggest, the Treaty of Versailles, in which we saw Germany accept the blame for the war starting and would have to pay plenty of money in reparations. I think it was 33 billion Reichsmarks. By the way, Doug, we got a bot on my Twitch chat.
Hold
on. And so not only did they have to lose those, they had to suffer the following punishments. They had to cede Schleswig and Southern Schleswig to Denmark, a country they weren't even at war with. But a referendum was later held to determine that fate. The Southern Schleswig was able to stay with Germany because that's what they voted for. They had to cede Eupen and Maldi to Belgium. And then they had to cede Alsace-Lorraine to France, as well as establish the Free State of Saarland for now to not be a part of Germany, which 15 years later they would just have a referendum to rejoin Germany anyway. They had to cede territory to the newly established Czechoslovakia to the east. They had to cede territory to the newly established Poland and Lithuania. And as well, they had to establish the free city of Danzig, which would be under Polish administration. And yes, they even lost part of their access to the Baltic Sea because of it. Weird, I know. The treaty also established restrictions on military, with Germany not being allowed to have an air force at all. They would have to limit how many ships they had, and they had to limit how many men they had in the service. I think they were forced to have no more than 100,000 men. Germany also had to demilitarize the Rhineland, as well as being not even being allowed to unify with Austria at all, under any circumstance. Now we go to Austria-Hungary. I gotta look up what treaty that was. Give me 1 second. Just want to make sure I'm getting the right treaties here. Oh, the Treaty of Saint-Germain-en-Laye had to do with Austria. Because at this point, Austria-Hungary had split into Austria and Hungary, so treaties were signed for both of them. So Saint-Germain-en-Laye was signed in September 1919, and it had to do with Austria. They had to accept the recognition of many countries. So like Czechoslovakia, which they lost land to. Hungary, which they lost some land to, but also gained a little bit for some reason. Lost land to the newly established Yugoslavia. Well, it wouldn't be called Yugoslavia until 1929. So they lost land to the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. I have answered the question, yeah. And they will also lose land to Italy. The problem is, Italy wasn't given as much land as they were promised by the Allies. So they got fucking duped. I know, I'll get back to that, don't worry. So, there was a lot here. Like, Austria also had to pay a lot of money. And they also had an army limitation and being told they were not allowed to unite with Germany.
Sorry about that, Mike.
You good?
Pizza trailer boss is asking if I could go in tomorrow. Like, dude, seriously? You already booked me all week. Next week.
I know, right? He can kick rocks. Anyway, now we get to the Treaty of Trianon, which was signed in June of 1920. And not only, I think they had some reparations they had to pay, but they also had to deal with a lot of territorial loss. They lost land to Poland. They lost land to Czechoslovakia. They lost land to Romania. They lost land to the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. They lost some land to Austria. Like, they were fucking diced up. Like, it was bad. Okay? That shit was bad. Hungary lost a fucking metric shit ton of land. I think they were the country to have lost the most land, I believe, in this war. And now we get to a treaty that was never ratified. And I'll explain why shortly. I'll explain this part, and then I'll go back and finish up the rest of post-World War I Europe. So, the Treaty of Sèvres was meant to deal with the Ottoman Empire. Bulgaria, for some reason, never got the formal treaty thing like the other ones did. But I digress. So, the Treaty of Sevres never got. The Treaty of Sevres was meant to divide the Ottoman Empire up in many different ways. Like it was like this. They were going to lose land to the Arab states. They were going to lose land to the British. They were going to lose land to the French. They were going to lose land to the Italians. They were going to lose land to the Greeks. And for some fucking reason, lose land to Bulgaria as well. And for some also reason, the Italians. So, I don't even know what in the hell they were talking with this treaty. But we have to talk about why that treaty was never ratified. Because at this point, the Ottoman government had been overthrown by Turk nationalists who started the Turkish War for Independence. That war went from 1920 to 1923, in which, at the point, the Armenian genocide had ended and the Republic of Turkey was established. Yes, Turkey was established and given the borders, new borders, in which a new treaty had to be forged in the form of the Treaty of Lausanne from July 1923, recognized the boundaries of the modern Turkey and settled the issues arising from the dissolution of the Ottomans. Meaning that Turkey today is the lone successor of the Eastern Roman Empire. Very fucking off, but it's very interesting. So, now let's scoot back, and now we get an idea of post-World War I Europe. Now, see, the Allies had even begun to occupy the Ruhr after Germany had some issues with some reparation payments later on. But Germany itself was going through a revolution of its own, with communist revolutions occurring in the country, but those communist revolutions failing, which didn't happen, which I believe failed, I believe it was 1922, or 1921 actually, I'm not sure, it's somewhere around there. But by this point, Germany was in a weakened state. They were now the Weimar Republic, and they now have to put up with the embarrassment that was their loss in World War I in Versailles. So we got one more thing to talk about before we head into the Russian Civil War. We have to go back. We have to talk about the Irish War of Independence. The Irish War of Independence began in 1919. And this was the chance that Ireland had long waited for. A chance to become an independent country. Home rule had been denied them. Because, moving on, there was a home rule bill that had passed in 1914. It was the third home rule bill that would have seen Ireland have its somewhat independence. But it got delayed because of the outbreak of the war. So the Irish War of Independence lasted until 1921, the Treaty of London. Ireland would be divided into two. Northern Ireland, which consisted of 6 of the 9 counties of Ulster in the north, and the rest of the island being Southern Ireland, with its capital of Dublin. That's and built the Irish Free State. However, that treaty had a bit of an issue. The dominant party in Ireland at that time, Sinn Féin, had 2 differing sides. One side was for the treaty, and they just accept the status quo. One anti-treaty faction of Sinn Féin had like fuck that. We want to be fully independent. Fuck you. And so, just 2 years after the independence from the British, the Irish Civil War happened. Went to 1925 with the Pro Treaty side winning. Just think about that. Going from brothers in arms, fighting your own independence war, having to be on opposite sides just years later. That's fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
So soon, too. But, and the leader of Ireland, of the Treaty forces, Eamon de Valera, resigned from the party and founded a whole new party called Fianna Fáil, which has actually been the dominant party in Ireland since 1932. It's been that long. But essentially, Ireland was free. And it would get their independence fully in 1937 with a new constitution. So now we can go back to 1918 and we start in the Russian Civil War. I'm going to try to simplify this to the best of my ability. Despite me knowing a good amount about this, I want to actually try to simplify this because there's way too much I could say on this, but for your sake, I would want to, kind of cut back on it a little bit. So, essentially, the Red Army had a good amount of land within the first third of the war. They had control of the Trans-Siberian Railroad and had captured Moscow, a city they would never relinquish throughout the rest of this war. You had the Czechoslovak regions, you had the White Army, you had Poland fighting you for parts of Western Belarus and Ukraine, and Poland actually winning, by the way. I know, it's weird. And losing the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania to independence, as well as Finland. And a bunch of other shit happening, including the Japanese in the Far East. Yeah, there's a lot. But the way I can describe it is like this. The Bolsheviks had early domination in the early parts of the war. Then the White Army and the Czechoslovak regions worked together and were able to really do some serious damage to the Bolsheviks. And were able to capture a lot of their territory back. But despite that, the Bolsheviks still had a massive amount. And then it all went to shit. Now, I have to clarify here. There, to this day, regarding what I'm about to teach you right here, there is a major dispute as to who made the call for what was about to happen. No one knows who came up with the order or if it was rogue action. But essentially, the Romanovs family, Tsar Nicholas II's family, now they were having a thing where they were sleeping. They slept. And soldiers from the Bolshevik side, the White Army side, I'm sorry, they sent them in, woke the family up, and sent them to the basement. And they shot the entire family dead, including Tsar Nicholas himself. All their kids, their wife, and Tsar Nicholas himself was killed. And that, I think that right there spelled the end for the White Army. And I feel like there was probably a reason why the Bolsheviks wanted him alive. But after that, the Bolsheviks had all the momentum. They took over. It was at this point as well, some White Army regiments had actually begun exploring the region of Mongolia and Tanatuva, which is out like in the far Siberia, where is now modern day Mongolia, in the area just to the immediate west. They began exploring the area. Maybe it was like a refugee site or whatever. But eventually, the Bolsheviks got in and they occupied both Mongolia and Tanatuva and established the first Soviet puppet states. Its first puppet states of the entire era. And by the end of 1922, the war was over. The Communist Party had won, and in comes the Soviet Union, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So, we've been through a lot so far. We've seen how many fucking wars come and go. We've seen how much Europe has changed. The world has changed. And what? We've made it to 1923, so 11 years. Look at how much we've fucking changed everything. It's fucking insane. We got new countries all over the place. Empires collapsing. Some countries getting bigger while some got smaller, and so on and so forth. But now we have to go back a little bit to begin the interwar period. So the interwar period obviously starts in November 1918. It was not like, okay, American soldiers were on their way back from Europe after the war ended. Now, they had picked up, when they were fighting in Europe, a flu. Now, it was caught, I believe, by a Spanish soldier or Spanish bug. I don't know what exactly it was. But essentially, it gave the fucker the flu, and it spread. No one knew how fucking contagious it was. And in comes the Spanish influenza. The first major obstacle of the interwar period. Because, well, what the fuck do you do when everyone's getting sick and dying? It's not exactly fucking good. And I'm telling you right fucking now, it was bound to happen. Not that I like to admit it, but it was bound to fucking happen. Eventually, well, what more is there? I mean, it killed a lot of people. I don't know. But they figured it out, they got the vaccine, and it's gone now. So, obviously, Europe was rebuilding. And honestly, there was a lot of sentiment right now. Believe it or not, we actually have a pretty good era of really no wars. Just like maybe some minor skirmishes here and there, but for the most part, there's really nothing. But we got more history because we got, like, in the U.S., prior to this era, was not allowed to vote. Women were not allowed to vote. In 1919, they changed that with women being allowed to vote. Now, obviously, you're going to have mixed opinions about that depending on where you are, but I'm not here to tell you what to believe or whatever. I'm just telling you, make your own decisions on your own accord, but don't spread them here. And the world thing, it was the first real step towards equality in the U.S. Another major piece of history right there. So, at this point, no real wars occurred And we're beginning to see a bit of a shift in Europe. A big shift in European politics. So, we start in Italy. Because this is where the exchange first appears. See, there's this bald dude by the name of Benito Mussolini. He worked with the Italian Socialist Party at one point, serving as a... I don't know if he was a recruiter or what he was, but he was within the Communist Party of Italy at that point. He got kicked out of that party for being pro-war when the rest of the party was anti-war because he believed that the war would bring instability needed for socialist uprisings to occur. And he got kicked out of the party for that. And then later, he formed his own party, the Fascist Party. Yeah, welcome to fascism, buddy. But it's fucking time. It's far right on the political spectrum, and it is considered to be... I'm trying to think. And it's... I don't know how to describe it, but it's bad. Essentially, what I'm telling you is it's fucking bad. But they took power in 1922 in a bloodless revolution. They took the throne, and they took over government. Italy was fascist. So there's our first major European political shift. It's very authoritarian, yes. And then where's the second change happen? In Germany. So Germany, we know, had a very shit economy at the end of World War I. Germany had, again, with all the reparation payments and failing to meet some, which caused the Ruhr to be occupied by the French for some reason, because they were failing to make the payments. So Germany was being economically screwed. And their economy was showing, their hyperinflation was occurring in Germany. But before I can finish Germany's change, we have to make a little bit of a pit stop in 1929. And I think you know where I'm going with this. In October 1929, the financial stock markets crashed in New York. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Great Depression. The Great Depression. The economy of the world was fucked. It was the biggest financial recession in probably ever. The Great Depression basically screwed everybody. The banks lost money, no money to give to their own consumers, own customers. What the hell was supposed to happen? It's bad. It's really bad. Like economies collapse. Like, if they weren't collapsed before, they are now. Germany's economy fucking collapsed. So bad. Bread was worth hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks. The Weimar Republic was just essentially just dead. And people were getting arrested for hiking bread prices, for hiking egg prices. Life in Germany was apocalyptic. But then in comes a man in the late 20s and early 30s that comes along and says, "Hey, Germany, I can fix everything." And the German population liked that. And so they voted this party in. Now, what man just said he could fix everything. Enter Adolf Hitler. And what was his party? The Nationalsozialist Deutsche Arbeitsparty. Or the German Workers' Party. The National Socialist German Workers' Party. Or Nazi Party for short. We have entered those ages, friends. Eventually, over time, things would pick up, for lack of a better term. Because now we are talking how Germany was going to be fixed. Like by the late 20s, like going into the Great Depression, the Nazi Party had already won hundreds of seats in the German parliament. And by the 1932 German presidential election, the Nazi Party had won almost every fucking seat in the Reichstag. Hitler lost the presidential election, but was named chancellor or co-chancellor by President Paul von Hindenburg, and Chancellor Franz Papen. And so Hitler came into power that way. And by the time Hindenburg died in 1935, Hitler took over as Führer of Germany. But you thought I was just going to skip all this ahead. No, not yet. Well, no, but yes. But we're going back, so we're putting a pin on 1935. So now we have to go to the Middle East, I think. Because now we are in the midst of great change. They got the protectorate states of Oman. We had the protectorate state of the UAE. Yemen, I believe, was under some English protection as well. Kuwait was established. Iraq was French. So was in Jordan and Lebanon. New countries everywhere. But no country would be probably more vital than the creation of Saudi Arabia. And I know Duck's asleep.
Hey, leave me alone. I'm right on 4.5 hours and a long day at work, alright?
Wait, you just found this ASMR or some shit?
What do you mean? What do you mean I find this as ASMR? No, I don't.
But yeah. Let's go. By this point, like, Saudi Arabia was now formed, and we're in 1932. They have it formally established as such. And this was a great time. Saudi Arabia, as we now know, what is a major power for oil, which is good, made them a lot of money. Even if some of it's a little cheesy. You want to read that one from MCS?
What? Doug, stop being a bum and stay in school. I know this dream is better than half of Akron education.
Is he wrong?
Ouch.
Is he wrong?
Again, not wrong.
All right, he's not wrong then. But yeah, but you can see
about Penn State as well.
Yeah, exactly. But really, not much has changed. The only real change that happened was just kind of a build up to World War II. Except we have to go to 1931 because we have a bit of development right now. What was that? Oh, the Japanese are invading China? Oh shit. See, Japan had invaded China through occupied Korea. And it was with this that they established the puppet state of Manchukuo in what is now the Manchuria province of China. Manchukuo was established, but no formal full wars happened. We're going to go back to 1927 because there was one big event that did happen, and that was the start of the Chinese Civil War. Yeah, shit is picking up in China. You had so many factions, but the main two that we're going to focus on is the Kuomintang, which is the representative of the Republic of China under General Chiang Kai-shek, and the Communist Party under Mao Zedong. I know, something. I said we'll get to that, bum. And by 1937, we'll put a pin in after this. The war had stalled out, but in comes the Japanese. The Marco Polo Bridge incident was staged, and the Japanese invaded China, and they captured the Chinese capital Nanking, where some very heinous war crimes occurred. And for your sake and mine, I am not going to mention anything that happened. And that one I'm going to tell you to fucking look up on your own accord. But essentially, people were deprived of themselves. If you kind of get the meaning there.
Yeah.
So, you kind of come up with the rest of the world. Now we're in 1935. A clearly unobscure war happening in South America. And, oh, wait, what's this? A war with Australian emus? Oh, wait. Now it's time to laugh at the Australians, reminding them once again that they lost a war to fucking emus in 1932, when there was a rampant problem of emus attacking farmers' crops in Western Australia, destroying fences, eating their crops and everything. Out of the 20,000 emus, they killed 960 before calling it a day. They lost to the fucking emus. How do you lose a war to emus? But yeah, now we can just go ahead and just laugh at the Australians. Ha 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 ha.
And you say nearly 9,000 or 900 compared to
960 compared to 20,000.
Compared to freaking 20,000, dear Lord.
Yeah. So,
damn it!
let's go back to that 1935 war.
Loose again.
Well, let's go back to 1935, and we got to go back to South America, because we got our first South American war, and I think the only one off this era, and that was the Chaco's War between Bolivia and Paraguay, where Bolivia fought Paraguay in a 3-year conflict, and lost land, and Paraguay wound up ceding land to Bolivia, which was eventually given back years later because of disputed territory. Got to think. But at this point, Italy was starting to pick up its aggression. Actually, both Italy and Germany were. See, Italy, Germany, and Japan had already by this point formed this thing called the Axis powers. I know, it's weird. But they formed that alliance, and all sides, were friendly. And so they began to build up. Hitler, by this point, was in charge in Germany. He was the main guy, the head honcho, the Don, I guess you could call him. But it's around here where our story with Hitler and the Jews begins. Forewarning, anything about the Jews being spoken from here on out is purely historical and nothing of current modern politic bullshit. Keep that in mind. Anything being said about the Jews is historical in nature. Okay. With that being said, we can continue. This is where we begin to see treatment of the Jews by Hitler. Hitler viewed that the Jews were the reason the Germans lost World War One. As such, Hitler had a hatred for them. Now, part of it being as well that he liked the Jewish girl who rejected him, but still. So at this point, like, Germany had already begun secluding many Jews that were living in Germany of their rights, access to many buildings, that basically community features and all that, community buildings, all that shit. There's in different cities, there was different forms of discrimination. Like one city had a ban on Jews in transportation, and another city had ban of Jews in the movie theater. This is the beginning of the German segregation of Jewish people within the country. So something. By this point, now Germany had begun building up its army again. He introduced the Luftwaffe, the new German air machine. He remilitarized the Rhineland. They had just gone back to Saarland from the Free Protectoracy. They had gotten him back. Hitler was on top of his game right now. The Autobahn was established. Certain various aspects of the economy were fixed. Any communist quo was put down. Completely put down. And Germany at this rate was already beginning of way to expand. But nothing yet. The first piece of action comes in Spain. Now, why Spain? You see, Spain isn't exactly stable. They're fractured. And we have the Spanish Civil War, starting in 1936. Two factors nearly took place. The nationalist side, led by Francisco Franco, and the Republican side, which was leading towards the Soviet Union. And now they were fighting. Obviously the Soviets supported the Republican side. Italy and later Germany supported the Francisco Franco-led nationalist side. Obviously, this war lasted 3 years until 1939, but over that time, it was basically stalemate after stalemate. But eventually, in the end, with Italian and German support, the nationalists were able to win, and Franco took power. And he stayed neutral in World War II, but that's a whole other thing. So, Germany was all. Now we get to Italy. Because what's going on with Italy? Oh, they're invading Abyssinia, or the modern day Ethiopia. And they actually take it over pretty quickly too. The leader of Abyssinia goes into exile. The League of Nations does nothing. And German expansion in Europe begins. So the first move, they unify with Austria. Austria joins Nazi Germany. So German territory has gained, it's grown. The Allies did nothing. Then you had Czechoslovakia. This happened in 1938 as well. The Germans wanted the Sudetenland, an area within the Bohemia part of the Czechoslovakian Republic that we were in essentially a standstill almost. That the British and French were able to get signed the Munich Agreement, which basically said, okay, you can have the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. However, in exchange for the Sudetenland, you will sign this thing saying that you will not seek any more territorial ambitions. And I was like, okay, I got what I wanted anyway. Or so he told the British, because a year later, he annexed the rest of Czechoslovakia and gave land to Hungary and made Slovakia a puppet state, as well as Bohemia and Moravia, which would be another way to say Czechia. And by this point, you can already tell what's going on here. So Japan's fully at war. Europe is about to break out in war. And everything's about to fucking blow in a gasket. And the U.S. is just starting to come out of the Great Depression, 39, and said that if there's any European war, we are not fucking getting involved. And so basically the door was wide open. Germany wanted Poland to give them Danzig as well as the Polish corridor, so that way they can reunite East and West Prussia. Polish are like, bitch, the fuck no. And so, before the day happens, Germany signs a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. And essentially, they also partition Poland, saying that you could take this part, but we get the rest. So it's like, okay. And on September 1st, 1939, Hitler invades Poland. Welcome to World War II. 2 days later, Britain and France declare war on Germany after failure of Germany to withdraw their troops from Poland.
Excuse me.
And more, as time goes on, more and more colonies and everything join the war. But at this point, it was already on. On September 17th, the Soviet Union invaded Poland. Like, oh shit, Poland is dead. And by the end of the month, Poland was annexed and partitioned by the Germans and Soviets. So, good fucking bye, bitch. And right now, Europe kind of just sits around lazily. Like, really, really lazily just sits around. And they do nothing. The only other piece of war action that really happens is the Winter War between the Soviet Union and Finland. Oh, we have to talk about that one Finnish sniper. This man decides, okay, you know what? Fuck Russia. We're gonna fucking defend our land. This dude camouflaged himself in the snow. This man chewed on snow all day to make sure the enemy didn't see his breath. He had 500 confirmed kills with a no-scope sniper rifle.
Wow.
No shit, wow. That dude was fucking insane. Fucking. How do you even fucking define that? You don't. It's hard. And now we get to the Winter War. Finland loses, but the Russian advancement was not very impressive at all. But Finland got the Soviets got the land, and that was that. Nothing really happened in 1939 other than that. 1940. Oh, hey, Denmark dead. 6 hours. It took 6 hours to invade Denmark. It took 6 hours from invasion to surrender. Also, that they could get to Norway because they were trying to get natural ore from Sweden. And then Germany invaded Norway. And Norway was occupied by Germany. So now Germany could get all of the raw ore they could get. And now the march west. Hitler's Schlieffen Plan version 2. He invades Belgium. He invades Luxembourg again. He also invades the Netherlands. And they fucking steamrolled the French and British forces back. They trapped so many hundreds of thousands from Dunkirk. The Germans took Paris and the French surrendered. Italy had joined the war by this point. Italy and Germany had basically won for now. At this point, I believe Romania was getting close to joining as well in 1940. And through the Second Vienna War, Hungary was given Transylvania. There was a kitty. It's a kitty. And Romania had lost Bessarabia to the Soviet Union. And also in 1940, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Yeah, no, see ya. You're now Soviet. You're not Russian again. So, where are we in this timeline? We're in 1940, and Europe is either communist or fascist. And the German invasion of Britain, yeah, that never happened. Because the British had defended the channel pretty fucking well. Then the air conditions were not in their favor either.
Damn you, Big
Thus,
Red.
yeah, Winston Churchill, that infamous speech. And there's a kitty again.
Say no, let's go.
And at this point, it just looked like there was no way to really take out Britain. 1940 also saw the Lend-Lease Act between the U.S. and Britain. When the U.S. didn't enter the war, but would send support to Britain, like guns, ammo, whatever they needed, food, all that shit. They sent it over in support. And they had an oil embargo on Japan. Now, that's going to be important later, and you'll see why. So, what is really happening in 1940 other than that? Not really a lot. Not really a whole lot. Other than Bulgaria joining the war, too. So, 1941. So, first we have ourselves Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia actually at one point joined the Axis. However, the government got changed, and as a result, no longer supported the Axis and dropped out. Yeah, they said no. And the Axis invaded Yugoslavia and then partitioned it. And then not long later, they invaded Greece, who had been in the war for a while, but just kept kicking Italy's ass. And Greece died. Now, everything's quiet. The Balkans have been taken care of. So, and Spain has not getting into war, though Portugal is. So, what is there really to do? Other than fight in Africa and have it go like fucking teeter-tottering like a seesaw. So, what happens? Oh, hold on, I'm getting a telegraph. Yes. Oh. The Germans have invaded the Soviet Union. In the largest land invasion in known history, the Germans invaded the Soviets. Operation Barbarossa. They swept through the Baltics. They swept through Belarus. Swept through Ukraine. And almost got to Moscow. Now, why didn't they get Moscow? Oh, hi, Russian winter. How's it going? Yeah. Turns out Russian winters are very fucking harsh. And as a result, can't do shit. Can't do shit. So, obviously, what are you to do other than that? Fucking. Yeah, but the invasion was halted for now because of the winter. All right, so big invasion there. We're at the winter of 1941. Oh. Duck, they hit Pearl Harbor.
Well, of course they did.
They hit Pearl Harbor. December 7th, 1941. The Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor and brought the United States into the war, in which Germany declared war on the U.S. for some reason. On a colonial front of the war, it was just Italy being pushed back in East Africa and in Libya, and the Germans basically losing the colonial shit in Africa. 1942 at least. But other than that, really not much happened other than some other countries like Brazil and Colombia joining the war. Turkey didn't join the war, I don't think yet. And it was just kind of stalled. Also, on the same day of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese invaded the Philippines and British Malaysia. They had invaded and had taken over, and later back in 1942 now had invaded. They had invaded the Dutch East Indies, which was Indonesia. They invaded and begun bombing in northern Australia. Well, I got to that point. So, Japanese already invaded a shit ton of China when we were away. In 1942, they also gained an ally in Asia, in Thailand, who joined Japan in the war effort against the thing there. What's that? What's there? But anyway, 1942, Germany had Pearl Harbor completely optional. No, they really didn't, because the oil was getting cut off by the U.S. from the oil embargo. So that's why. Anyway. Okay. Seeing that they couldn't get to Moscow, Germany had no other option. They had to make another front, in which they did by going through the Caucasus. Seeing they could try to cut off Russia's oil reserves from the rest of Russia. But this is where we get to our turning point in Europe. The Battle of Stalingrad. 9 months of battling in the same city. The winner had control of the Caucasus. And 9 months later, in 1943, Stalingrad was won by Russia. The turning point had just occurred. Leningrad had been under siege, by the way, since 1941, or St. Petersburg. So, and in 1942 as well, Battle of Midway happened. It was to be the turning point in the Pacific Theater. Oh, the Japanese lost. Well, thanks for coming. Now you're about to lose. Pushback began on multiple sides. Operation Torch in 1942 was the last real caveat change from the front. 1943, Italy's undergone political change. Benito Mussolini has been ousted from his post as leader of Italy and then executed. And then Germany had to occupy Italy because they had signed a peace thing with the Allies after they had begun to invade through Sicily after taking all the African shit away from the Nazis. So now that's starting to collapse. The German East Front is starting to collapse. Everything was starting to go wrong for them. So with Japan, after multiple failed attempts into British India. And they were starting to get pushed back in Indonesia. So you can see the Allies are in trouble. the Axis are in trouble. Then Japan was basically using kamikaze tactics. At this point, there was no way to know for sure how it was going to end. But it was starting to get bad for the Axis. 1944, it kept getting worse. Japan kept getting pushed back from China. Thailand was getting invaded at this point. The more land in the Philippines was getting liberated, as well as Indonesia. Malaysia was, I think it might start the process of liberation, but I'm not sure. Japan was losing on all fronts. Okinawa was in the sights of the U.S. In Europe, I think it's time, Doc. D-Day. D-Day, June 6th, 1944. Gold, Sword, Omaha, Utah, and Juneau. Not in that order, but yeah. Those 5 beaches. Omaha and Utah were taken by the U.S. Gold and Sword were by the British. And the Canadians at Juneau. You gotta love D-Day. I mean, I had uncles that fought in D-Day. So, right, I'm sure everyone has at least an uncle that fought in D-Day at some point. But the Allies won at Normandy, and they were in mainland Europe again. In September, they invaded southern France at Marseilles. It was a General Eisenhower guy, yeah. And Eastern Front was still concentrating Germans as well. They were getting pushed back. Now, this is where I pause the World War II to bring you part 2 of Hitler's treatment towards the Jews. 1938, Kristallnacht had happened. If you don't know what that is, the term Kristallnacht is translated to the night of the broken glass. A night where Jewish synagogues, businesses, homes, everything was vandalized, arson. Jewish people were either killed or arrested and sent to camps in Germany. And we were getting to see, over time, as they capture more and more territory and access to more and more Jews. At first, the Jews were moved to big cities and put in ghettos in Warsaw, but then eventually transported to, I think, probably the most well-known concentration camp, Auschwitz. And here, I'm told throughout this entire war, 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, our second genocide. But it was fucking horrible. There's so many movies about it. Go watch some of them. Seriously, they're fucking spectacular. Boy in the Striped Pajamas. There was one by Schindler's List. Those are some fucking damn good movies that can recall that, and I recommend it. But eventually, with all right, the Russians have begun moving into the Balkans as well. Greece had been liberated and began pushing up through the Balkans as well. Oh Lord, I thought that reading night. Oh, I did read that in school too. I did. That was horrific shit. That was a Diary of Anne Frank as well. But it recalls a lot of major shit. Like, with Allies pushing from all sides now, Germany was fucked. Like, they had tried to make a bulge, but that really didn't do much of anything. The German war machine was collapsing on itself. And eventually, Adolf Hitler took his own life on April 30th, 1945, and a week later, Germany surrendered. The war was over in Europe. Meanwhile, in Japan, by 1944, they were done for. It was only a matter of time. In February 1945, the U.S. had captured the island of Iwo Jima, which means that any bombers that they could send were within range of the Japanese homeland. It was at this point where the U.S. was kind of at a crossroads. Because they were working on something at the time, but they weren't sure it was going to be enough. But they were still trying to find an alternate solution. With everything else in Southeast Asia just about liberated, in July 1945, they finally tested the bomb. The Manhattan Project had worked. The first nuclear test in history. Why, hello there, Oppenheimer. I know, great movie. And what do you know? By the time it had come to July, the U.S. warned Japan, either surrender now or else face pure and utter destruction. Japan didn't surrender. August 6th, 8 o'clock in the morning local time, over the Japanese port city of Hiroshima. Little boy, boom. 80,000 dead in Hiroshima. On August 9th, the Soviets declared war on Japan and invaded Manchuria. Despite that, Japan didn't surrender. Morning of August 9th, Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. 100,000 dead, with many coming from radiation poisoning. It was horrific. And eventually, with the fear that Tokyo would be nuked by the U.S. if they did not surrender on August 15th or 14th, depending on where you were in the world, the Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, surrendered to the Allies. The war was over. So, where do we start? Well, let's try to clean up this mess. I think it's had a 6-year-long war, technically 8, but I digress. So, let's start in Germany. They lost all of Silesia, Pomerania, they lost all of East Prussia, including Danzig and including Königsberg. They lost territory to the Soviets. They lost territory to Poland. They lost land to Czechoslovakia, which was reformed. They lost over to Denmark. They lost on the Netherlands, the Belgians. I think they lost it to the French. Saarland was recreated. They had to pay hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks and reparations. hundreds of billions, I should say. And they were basically Germany itself. They lost Austria again, and they were divided into 4 occupation zones: French, British, American, and Soviet. Berlin as well was also divided, with the West Berlin being occupied by the French, British, and American, where East Berlin was occupied by the Soviets. Yep, the Nuremberg trials, 1946. That movie is fucking fantastic. And the world was being pieced together. Germany was divided. Italy had lost, they had initially lost their colonies in Africa, giving Eritrea to Ethiopia, and had lost their Somalia territory to the British. As well as, but they managed to keep Libya for some reason, as a trust territory. They lost they lost Albania, and they had lost their hold on the city of Trieste. Bulgaria had some minor land losses, nothing really much. Romania got the land back that they lost at Hungary. And Poland had lost the eastern part of its territory to the Soviets, while getting Germany's western part. The Winter War Treaty was basically ratified right there confirmed. And now Europe was divided. Austria as well was also divided, by the way, as well as Vienna. No one really mentions that, but it was. In Japan, well, they were occupied by the U.S. and as later they had lost both Korea and Taiwan to the Republic of China, and Korea was divided at the 38th parallel. Soviets controlling the north and the U.S. controlling the south. Chinese Civil War restarted and ended in 1949 with the Republic of China fleeing to the island of Taiwan. That ended that. So was that. And obviously we all know what happened with Korea in 1950. I really don't think I have to say much there. Japan was limited to the islands of Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu. It doesn't know. But they were limited to the 4 islands plus any outlying minor islands to be determined. They were occupied by the U.S. until 1952. And then for the rest of this era, the only thing that really happened was, there's some, communist puppets being established in Eastern Europe and the beginning of the Cold War. That was fun. The first Indochina War had begun with Vietnamese independence on the line. Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodian. So, and I was the Philippines became independent in 1946. But from there, the last real thing I can really leave you guys on a good note with will be the Greek Civil War between the monarchists and the communists, in which the monarchists won in 1949. Because that was the last real conflict in that, other than the Chinese Civil War. The only thing that happened in 1947 was the independence of India and Pakistan, which was west and east. And then wars between India and Pakistan over the region of Kashmir and Jammu. So, the World War era, in summary, was this 35-year major transition zone from what we know as historic period of our world history into the modern era of our world history. Because now we have begun to see that shift. Europe at this point was no longer monarchist. They were now republics. And there was two types of government now. There was capitalist government and there was communist government. It was the Cold War. And now everything is coming to a spare point. We had seen world wars. We had seen rebellions. We had seen civil wars. We have seen so much change in this time. The world changed in these 35 years. And in the very end, now the World War era shaped the modern world as we know it. So, I want you to think about this. I may be high as shit, but I just fucking cooked with that.
Mm-hmm. You sure did.
I did cook indeed. I kept my fucking composure. So I don't want to hear any more of how incapable of high on stream I am. Nearly lost it a couple times, but I got it course corrected.
Yep, and even MCS is saying you cooked.
Yeah, I know I cooked. I fucking cooked that gourmet shit. But I hope to God you take this stream, right? I want you guys to take this stream, and I just want you to I want you to take away from it, like what you've learned. Actually, everyone in the chat right now, I want you to tell me one thing you've learned tonight. One thing you learned tonight. Would our TA like to share what he learned tonight?
So, obviously, the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo, it really was the big turning point of how the hell we got our big major stars in the first place. But I never knew there was a lot more that meets the eye, like Austria trying to talk with Serbia, trying to prevent any wars from happening, and of course Serbia, they kind of liked it except for one minor detail, and they just simply declined. And Austria is, of course, like any normal person today, would not take no for an answer, declared war on Serbia. And then Russia declared war on Austria-Hungary, and it was snowballs. And thus leading to some major characters that we now know and somewhat love today.
Hell yeah, brother. Every decision that was made from the turn of the century to 1945, there was an equal or negative reaction. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The event where the family got massacred, yeah.
Yeah, that was sick.
Yeah. hold on. I can't believe I held it together. See, look at that, dog. I can be high and I can be coherent while screaming.
Good
Fuck
to know.
you.
Good to know we fixed it.
You didn't fix shit.
I didn't
should wash
say
your
I
ass.
fixed it. I'm saying you fix shit.
You should wash your ass.
Wash it.
Wash your ass, yes. Wash your ass.
What's wrong with you?
Alright. But hope you guys I really do hope you guys took something away from this stream. Because honestly, God, this was fucking fun. This was fucking fun. I'm glad I did it. Maybe we do it again sometime. Because it actually might just give me it's sort of secondary content to do here once in a while. That could be fun. But if you did enjoy, you know, feel like, comment, share with your friends, family, and you know, subscribe to Watching Canadian here on YouTube. Follow me on Twitch, sub on Twitch, whatever. But I'm a Watching Canadian. I'm high as fuck. That's been Duck, Mr. Fuck.
Hey, yo.
And I'll see you guys later. Smoke weed every day.